Stop. You haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Subscribe now. We have new stories every day. Now, let's go. Adriana hummed softly as she applied a coat of deep red lipstick, her eyes fixed on her reflection in the bedroom mirror. The late afternoon sun cast a warm glow through the curtains, highlighting the subtle lines around her eyes, reminders of her 32 years. She smoothed down her form-fitting black dress, a hint of excitement bubbling in her chest. Going somewhere? Jackson's voice startled her. She turned to see him leaning against the doorframe, his tie loosened and a puzzled expression on his face. Oh, just meeting up with some friends, Adriana lied smoothly, her heart racing. I thought you'd be working late again. Jackson shrugged, his shoulders slumping slightly. The project wrapped up early. I thought maybe we could have dinner together for once. Guilt gnawed at Adriana, but she pushed it aside. I'm sorry, I already made plans. Maybe tomorrow. Jackson nodded, his disappointment evident. Sure, tomorrow. He retreated down the hallway, leaving Adriana alone with her thoughts. She sighed, turning back to the mirror. The woman staring back at her looked confident, desirable, everything she hadn't felt in her marriage for years. Jackson was a good man, hardworking and loyal, but somewhere along the way, they'd lost their spark. The long hours he put in at the office left her feeling neglected, yearning for something more. That something more had a name. Tristan. Adriana's phone buzzed with a text. Can't wait to see you. Beautiful. 30 minutes. Her pulse quickened as she read Tristan's message. Their affair had started innocently enough. A chance meeting at a coffee shop, witty banter that turned into long conversations, and finally, a stolen kiss that ignited a fire she thought had long since burned out. She grabbed her purse and made her way downstairs, finding Jackson in the kitchen, half-heartedly assembling a sandwich. I won't be out too late, Adriana said, the lie tasting bitter on her tongue. Jackson looked up, his eyes searching hers. Adri, is everything okay? You've been different lately. Adriana forced a smile. Everything's fine. Just busy with work and friends. You know how it is. Yeah, I guess I do, Jackson replied, his tone tinged with resignation. As Adriana reached for the door, the sound of tires on gravel made her freeze. A car door slammed, followed by confident footsteps approaching the house. Expecting someone? Jackson asked, moving toward the front door. Before Adriana could respond, there was a sharp knock. Jackson opened the door, revealing a tall, handsome man with a cocky grin. Can I help you? Jackson asked, confusion evident in his voice. The stranger's gaze moved past Jackson, locking onto Adriana. Ready to go, gorgeous. Adriana felt the blood drain from her face as Jackson turned to her, his expression a mix of shock and dawning realization. Adri, what's going on? Jackson demanded, his voice tight with anger. Tristan stepped forward, his presence filling the doorway. I think it's pretty clear what's going on. Your wife is going on a date with me tonight. It's non-negotiable. The room seemed to tilt on its axis as Adriana watched Jackson's face contoured with a myriad of emotions. Disbelief, hurt, and finally rage. Who the hell do you think you are? Jackson growled, his fists clenching at his sides. Tristan smirked. I'm the man your wife's been seeing for the past few months. The name's Tristan, by the way. Jackson whirled to face Adriana, his eyes blazing. Is this true? Have you been cheating on me? Adriana's mouth went dry, her carefully constructed lies crumbling around her. Jackson, it's not what you think. Not what I think. Jackson's voice rose, filling the room. There's a man at our door claiming he's taking my wife on a date, and it's not what I think. Tristan leaned against the doorframe, watching the scene unfold with an amused expression. Come on, Adriana. We don't want to be late for our reservation. Jackson stepped between them, his body tense with barely contained fury. You're not going anywhere with him, Adri. If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back. Adriana felt a surge of defiance rise within her. For too long, she felt trapped in this marriage, suffocated by routine and neglect. "You can't tell me what to do, Jackson. I'm a grown woman, capable of making my own choices." "Choices?" Jackson scoffed. "You mean like the choice to betray our marriage vows, to lie to me for months? You haven't exactly been the model husband." Adriana shot back, years of resentment bubbling to the surface. "When was the last time you made me feel wanted, appreciated? Tristan gives me what you haven't in years." Jackson recoiled as if he'd been slapped. "So that's it. Our 10 years of marriage mean nothing because I've been working hard to provide for us." Tristan cleared his throat. "As fascinating as this domestic drama is, we really should be going, Adriana." Adriana looked between the two men. Jackson, his face a mask of pain and betrayal, and Tristan, confident and alluring. In that moment, she made her choice. "I can do whatever I want," she declared, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm a free woman, Jackson. You can't cage me anymore." She grabbed her purse and brushed past Jackson, who stood frozen in disbelief. As she reached Tristan, he wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close. "Adri," Jackson's voice cracked. "A final plea. Don't do this. We can work things out." Adriana paused at the threshold, looking back at the man she'd once promised to love forever. For a brief moment, doubt flickered in her heart. Then she felt Tristan's hand on the small of her back, urging her forward. "I'm sorry, Jackson," she said softly, "but I need to do this for me." With those words, she stepped out into the warm evening air, leaving behind the shattered remains of her marriage. As Tristan led her to his car, she could hear Jackson's anguished voice calling after her. "If you leave now, Adri, we're done. Do you hear me? There's no coming back from this." Adriana slid into the passenger seat, her hand shaking as she buckled her seatbelt. Tristan started the engine, flashing her a triumphant grin. "Ready for some excitement, beautiful." As they pulled away from the curb, Adriana caught a glimpse of Jackson in the rearview mirror. He stood in the doorway, a broken figure, watching his world drive away. She turned her gaze forward, pushing down the twinge of regret that threatened to surface. "More than ready," she replied, forcing a smile. The car accelerated, carrying Adriana toward an uncertain future, leaving behind the fractured foundation of the life she once knew. The cool evening air whipped through Adriana's hair as Tristan's car sped down the highway. Her heart raced, a mix of excitement and anxiety coursing through her veins. She glanced at Tristan, his confident smile illuminated by the dashboard lights. "Where are we going?" Adriana asked, her voice betraying a hint of nervousness. Tristan reached over, squeezing her thigh. "I thought we'd start with dinner at Le Bry's. Then who knows? The night is young, and so are we." Adriana forced a smile, pushing down the nagging doubt in her mind. This was what she wanted, wasn't it? Freedom, excitement, a break from the mundane routine of her marriage. As they pulled up to the valet at Le Bry's, Tristan came around to open her door. "Ready to turn some heads, gorgeous?" Adriana stepped out, smoothing her dress. "Lead the way." The restaurant buzzed with energy, soft jazz playing in the background. As they were led to their table, Adriana felt eyes on her, a mix of admiration and judgment. She lifted her chin, determined to embrace this new chapter. Tristan ordered an expensive bottle of wine without even looking at the menu. "Only the best for my girl," he said with a wink. As they sipped their wine, Adriana's phone buzzed insistently in her purse. She knew without looking that it was Jackson. Guilt gnawed at her stomach, but she pushed it aside. "Everything okay?" Tristan asked, his eyes narrowing slightly. Adriana forced a bright smile. "Perfect. Just perfect." The evening progressed, a whirlwind of rich food, flowing wine, and Tristan's charismatic stories. Yet as the hours wore on, Adriana found herself struggling to stay engaged. Her mind kept drifting back to Jackson, imagining him alone in their house, devastated. As they left the restaurant, Tristan pulled her close. "Your place or mine?" Adriana hesitated. I'm not sure that's a good idea tonight. Tristan's grip on her arm tightened slightly. Come on, Adri. After everything that went down earlier, you're gonna play coy now. I'm not playing anything, Adriana said, pulling away. I just need some time to process everything. Tristan's charming facade slipped for a moment, revealing a flash of anger. Fine. I'll take you to a hotel then. You shouldn't go home tonight anyway. The drive to the hotel was tense, Tristan's earlier warmth replaced by a cold silence. As they pulled up to the entrance, he finally spoke. I'll pick you up tomorrow morning. We'll go apartment hunting. Adriana's head snapped up. Apartment hunting? Tristan, I haven't even. You made your choice, Adriana. Tristan cut her off, his tone leaving no room for argument. Or do you want to crawl back to your husband with your tail between your legs? Adriana flinched at his harsh words. This wasn't the Tristan she thought she knew. I'll see you in the morning, she managed, climbing out of the car. As she checked into the hotel, the reality of her situation began to sink in. She was alone, cut off from her home. Her life had turned upside down in the span of a few hours. In her room, Adriana finally looked at her phone. Dozens of missed calls and messages from Jackson, each one more desperate than the last. With trembling fingers, she dialed his number. Adri. Jackson's voice was rough, as if he'd been crying. Where are you? Please come home. We can talk about this. Adriana's throat tightened. I can't, Jackson. Not tonight. Why? The pain in his voice was palpable. Because of him. Adri, this isn't you. You're throwing away everything we've built. Maybe what we built wasn't enough, Adriana said, her voice barely above a whisper. I need time to figure things out. Jackson's tone hardened. Time. You want time while you're out there with another man. Do you have any idea what you're doing to me, to us? I'm sorry, Adriana choked out, tears streaming down her face. I never meant to hurt you. But you did, Jackson said coldly. You made your choice, Adriana. Now you have to live with it. The line went dead, leaving Adriana alone with her thoughts. The next few weeks passed in a blur. True to his word, Tristan helped Adriana find an apartment. They spent their days exploring the city, trying new restaurants, and their nights tangled in each other's arms. On the surface, it was everything Adriana had dreamed of. Passion, spontaneity, freedom from responsibility. But as the initial excitement faded, cracks began to appear in the facade. Tristan's charming confidence often veered into arrogance. His possessiveness, once thrilling, started to feel suffocating. One evening, as they prepared for a night out, Adriana found herself longing for a quiet evening in. Do we have to go out tonight? She asked, slipping off her heels. Maybe we could just order in, watch a movie. Tristan's eyes flashed with annoyance. Come on, Adri. Don't tell me you're turning into a homebody already. I thought you wanted excitement. I do, but... Nothing. Tristan interrupted, tossing her shoes back to her. Get dressed. I didn't sign up for a night on the couch. Adriana bit her lip, a retort dying on her tongue. This wasn't the first time Tristan had dismissed her wishes, but she told herself it was a small price to pay for the life she now had. As the weeks turned into months, these small moments of discord grew more frequent. Tristan's criticism of her clothes, her friends, even her laugh became a constant undercurrent in their relationship. One afternoon, Adriana was folding laundry when she came across one of Jackson's old t-shirts, accidentally mixed in with her things during the hasty move. She held it to her face, inhaling the familiar scent of home. For a moment, she allowed herself to remember the good times. Lazy Sunday mornings, inside jokes, the comfort of knowing someone had her back, no matter what. The sound of the front door slamming jolted her from her reverie. Tristan stormed in, his face like thunder. What the hell is this? He demanded, waving his phone in her face. On the screen was a photo of Adriana at lunch with a male coworker, taken earlier that day. It's lunch with Greg from accounting, Adriana explained, her heart racing. We were discussing the Johnson project. Tristan's eyes narrowed. Looked pretty cozy for a work lunch. Is this why you've been so distant lately? You're already looking for your next victim. Victim. Adriana's voice rose. What are you talking about? It was just lunch. Don't play dumb, Adri. Tristan spat. I know your type, always looking for the next thrill, the next man to wrap around your finger. Adriana recoiled as if she'd been slapped. My type. You don't know anything about me if that's what you think. I know enough, Tristan growled, grabbing her arm. I know you're a cheater, a liar. Why should I be any different from your husband? Adriana wrenched her arm free, anger and fear warring within her. You're nothing like Jackson. He never treated me like this. No, Tristan's laugh was cruel. Then why did you leave him? Face it, Adri, you're damaged goods. I'm the best you're going to get. The words hit Adriana like a physical blow. She stumbled back, tears blurring her vision. Without a word, she grabbed her purse and ran from the apartment, Tristan's angry shouts following her down the stairs. She found herself wandering the streets, her mind in turmoil. How had she ended up here? The excitement and passion she'd craved had twisted into something ugly, leaving her feeling more trapped than she ever had in her marriage. As night fell, Adriana found herself in a familiar neighborhood. Before she could second-guess herself, she was walking up the path to her old house, to Jackson. Her hand trembled as she rang the doorbell. Moments passed, each second an eternity. Finally, the door opened, revealing Jackson. He looked older, tired, his eyes widening in shock at the sight of her. Adri. His voice was guarded, a far cry from the warmth she remembered. What are you doing here? Adriana opened her mouth, but no words came out. Instead, a sob escaped her throat, months of pent-up emotion pouring out. Jackson's expression softened for a moment before hardening again. Come in, he said gruffly. You shouldn't be out on the street like this. Adriana followed him into the living room, the familiar surroundings both comforting and painful. She sank onto the couch, trying to compose herself. I'm sorry, she finally managed. I didn't know where else to go. Jackson stood by the fireplace, his posture rigid. What happened? Did Loverboy finally show his true colors? The bitterness in his voice made Adriana flinch. Jackson, I made a terrible mistake. I thought I wanted freedom, excitement, but I was wrong. So wrong. And now? And now what? Jackson's voice was cold. You think you can just come back and everything will be forgiven? That we can pick up where we left off? Adriana shook her head, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. No, I don't expect that. I needed to see you, to tell you how sorry I am for what I did. Jackson was quiet for a long moment, his internal struggle visible on his face. When he spoke, his voice was low and controlled. Do you have any idea what you put me through, Adri? The humiliation, the pain. I trusted you. And you threw it all away for what? Some arrogant bastard. It wasn't just a fling, Adriana whispered. I thought I was in love with him. But it wasn't real. Nothing about it was real. Jackson laughed humorlessly. And our marriage, was that real? Or was I just a placeholder until something more exciting came along? Adriana stood, taking a tentative step toward him. Our marriage was the realest thing in my life, Jackson. I was too blind to see it then, but I see it now. I know I hurt you, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. For a moment, something flickered in Jackson's eyes, a hint of the love they once shared. But as quickly as it appeared, it was gone, replaced by a steely resolve. I appreciate your apology, he said formally, but it doesn't change anything. You made your choice, and we both have to live with the consequences. Adriana felt her heart shatter anew at his words. Jackson, please, can't we at least talk about? There's nothing to talk about. Jackson cut her off. You should go. It's late, and we both need to move on with our lives." Adriana stood frozen, the finality of his words washing over her. This was the true cost of her actions laid bare. She had gambled everything on a fantasy and lost it all. With a shaky nod, she gathered her purse. At the door, she turned back one last time. "I truly am sorry, Jackson, for everything." Jackson's face was a mask of carefully controlled emotion. "Goodbye, Adriana." As the door closed behind her, Adriana felt the full weight of her choices crashing down upon her. The life she had known, the love she had taken for granted, all of it was gone, leaving her alone in the cold night, facing an uncertain future of her own making. Adriana stood on the sidewalk, the chill of the night seeping into her bones. Jackson's final goodbye echoed in her ears, a haunting reminder of all she had lost. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold together the pieces of her shattered world. As she walked aimlessly through the darkened streets, her mind raced. Where could she go? The thought of returning to Tristan made her stomach churn. Her apartment no longer felt like a sanctuary, but a prison of her own making. With each step, the weight of her choices pressed down on her, threatening to crush her entirely. Days passed in a blur. Adriana called in sick to work, unable to face the normalcy of office life when everything else had fallen apart. She ignored Tristan's increasingly angry calls and messages, each one a stark reminder of how badly she had misjudged him and herself. On the fifth day, as Adriana sat in her dimly lit apartment, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and the remnants of her foolish dreams, a sharp knock at the door jolted her from her stupor. Her heart raced as she approached. Was it Tristan, come to continue their argument? Or worse, had he somehow discovered her visit to Jackson? Taking a deep breath, she opened the door. To her shock, it was Jackson who stood in the hallway, his face set with determination. "Jackson," Adriana's voice cracked. "What are you doing here?" Jackson's eyes were hard, devoid of the warmth she once knew. "We need to talk, Adriana. May I come in?" Wordlessly, Adriana stepped aside, allowing him to enter. As he moved past her, she caught a whiff of his familiar scent, a painful reminder of the life she had thrown away. Jackson stood in the center of the living room, taking in the chaos around him. His gaze lingered on a framed photo of Adriana and Tristan, his jaw tightening visibly. "Nice place," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "I hope it was worth it." Adriana flinched at his words. "Jackson, I..." He held up a hand, cutting her off. "Save it, Adri. I'm not here for apologies or explanations. I'm here because we need to finalize this situation." "Finalize?" Adriana's voice trembled. "What do you mean?" Jackson's eyes met hers, cold and resolute. "I mean divorce, Adriana. I've had enough time to think, and I've realized I can't continue living in limbo. Our marriage is over, and it's time we made it official." The word divorce hit Adriana like a physical blow. Even after everything, some part of her had clung to the hope that they could find their way back to each other. That hope now lay shattered at her feet. "Jackson, please," she begged, tears welling in her eyes. "Can we at least try to work things out? What we had was real. What we had is gone." Jackson interrupted, his voice sharp. "You killed it the moment you walked out that door with him." He gestured to the photo of Tristan. "You made your choice, Adriana. Now it's time to face the consequences." Adriana sank onto the couch, her legs no longer able to support her. "I know I made a terrible mistake, Jackson, but our marriage meant everything to me. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive me?" Jackson's laugh was harsh, devoid of humor. "Forgive you? Do you have any idea what you've put me through? The humiliation of having my wife leave me for another man. The pitying looks from friends and colleagues. The sleepless nights wondering what I did wrong." His words cut deep, each one a reminder of the pain she had caused. Adriana buried her face in her hands, unable to meet his gaze. Jackson continued, his voice growing louder with each word. "And now what? You've had your fun, realize the grass isn't greener, and you think you can just come back. That's not how this works, Adriana. Actions have consequences, and it's time you faced yours. Adriana looked up, her face streaked with tears. I know I hurt you, Jackson. I know I can never take that back. But what we had was real. Don't throw it away because of one mistake. One mistake. Jackson's eyes flashed with anger. You call months of lying and cheating one mistake. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment, Adriana. You systematically destroyed our marriage, piece by piece. He paced the room, running a hand through his hair in frustration. Do you know what kills me the most? It's that I never saw it coming. I trusted you completely. I thought we were happy, that we had a future together, and all the while, you were planning your escape. Adriana stood, reaching out to him. It wasn't like that, Jackson. I never planned. Jackson jerked away from her touch as if burned. Don't try to justify what you did. There's no excuse, no explanation that can make this right. A tense silence fell between them, years of shared history and shattered trust hanging in the air. Finally, Jackson spoke again, his voice quieter but no less firm. I want you out of the house, Adriana. All of your things gone by the end of the week. I'll have my lawyer draw up the divorce papers. The sooner we can end this charade, the better. Adriana felt as if the floor had dropped out from under her. You're kicking me out. Jackson, that's our home. We built it together. No. Jackson's voice was icy. I built it. I worked 60-hour weeks to afford that house, to give us the life you claim to want. And how did you repay me? By throwing it all away for some cheap thrills with a man you barely knew. His words stung, each one a reminder of her selfishness and betrayal. Adriana sank back onto the couch, the fight draining out of her. Where am I supposed to go? Jackson's laugh was bitter. That's not my problem anymore, is it? You made your bed, Adriana. Now you get to lie in it. Though I'm sure your lover boy will be more than happy to accommodate you. At the mention of Tristan, Adriana felt a fresh wave of shame wash over her. Tristan and I. It's over. I realized what a mistake I'd made. How convenient for you, Jackson sneered. And now what? You thought you could come crawling back, and I'd welcome you with open arms. That's not how the real world works, Adriana. You don't get to press reset on people's lives when you're done playing your games. Adriana looked up at him, really looked at the man she had promised to love forever. The pain and anger etched on his face were a stark testament to the damage she had caused. In that moment, she realized the true extent of what she had lost. Not just a husband, but a partner, a friend, a future. I'm so sorry, Jackson, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I know it doesn't change anything, but I truly am sorry for all the pain I've caused you. Jackson's expression softened for a fraction of a second before hardening once more. You're right. It doesn't change anything. I want you out of the house by Friday. After that, we'll communicate through our lawyers. He moved toward the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. For a moment, Adriana allowed herself to hope he might turn back, might offer some small glimmer of forgiveness. But when he spoke, his voice was cold and final. Goodbye, Adriana. I hope your freedom was worth the price. The door closed behind him with a soft click, the sound deafeningly loud in the silence of the apartment. Adriana sat motionless, the full weight of her actions crashing down upon her. She had gambled everything, her marriage, her home, her future, on a fantasy that had crumbled to dust in her hands. The next few days passed in a haze of grief and regret. Adriana moved through the motions of packing up her life, each item a painful reminder of what she had thrown away. Friends called, their voices a mix of concern and judgment, but she let their messages go unanswered. What could she say? How could she explain the depth of her mistake, the enormity of her loss? On Friday morning, Adriana stood in the driveway of the home she had once shared with Jackson. Her car was packed with the remnants of her life, boxes stacked haphazardly in the back seat and trunk. She clutched the house key in her hand, its familiar weight now a burden. The front door opened, and Jackson stepped out. He looked tired, these past months having taken their toll. For a moment, their eyes met, and Adriana felt a flicker of the connection they'd once shared. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a wall of hurt and betrayal. "Is that everything?" Jackson asked, his voice devoid of emotion. Adriana nodded, unable to trust her voice. She held out the key, her hand trembling slightly. Jackson took it, careful not to let their fingers touch. "The lawyers will be in contact about the division of assets," he said stiffly. "I trust you won't make this any more difficult than it needs to be." "No," Adriana managed to choke out. "I won't fight you on anything, Jackson. You deserve better than what I gave you." A flicker of something, pain, regret, she couldn't be sure, passed across Jackson's face. For a heartbeat, Adriana allowed herself to hope he might soften, might offer some small comfort or forgiveness. But when he spoke, his voice was firm and final. "Goodbye, Adriana. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for." With that, he turned and walked back into the house, closing the door on their shared life with a decisive click. Adriana stood there for a moment longer, staring at the home that was no longer hers. Memories washed over her, lazy Sunday mornings, holiday celebrations, quiet evenings curled up on the couch, all gone, sacrificed on the altar of her own selfishness and discontent. As she climbed into her car, a sob caught in her throat. She had thought she wanted freedom, excitement, a break from the mundane. Now, faced with the reality of her choices, she realized, too late, the value of what she had carelessly discarded. Adriana started the engine, taking one last look at the house in her rearview mirror. The life she had known, the love she had taken for granted, the future she had dreamed of, all of it lay behind her now, as unreachable as a mirage in the desert. As she drove away, the weight of her decisions pressed down upon her like an anchor. She had destroyed the foundation of her life, brick by brick, and now she was left to build something new from the rubble. The road ahead was uncertain, lonely, a testament to the consequences of her actions. In the end, Adriana realized the freedom she had so desperately craved had become a prison of her own making. The excitement she sought had turned to ashes in her mouth, and the love she had carelessly discarded. That was the greatest loss of all, a wound that would never truly heal. As the house faded from view, Adriana faced the stark reality of her new life. She had made her choice, and now she would have to live with the consequences. The future stretched out before her, a blank canvas painted with regret and the bitter knowledge of what she had lost. The story of Adriana and Jackson, a tale of love, betrayal, and irreparable damage, came to its inevitable end. And in the silence of her car, driving toward an uncertain future, Adriana finally understood the true cost of her actions. She had gained her freedom, but lost everything that had ever truly mattered. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.